So I'm not even sure how I did that. So I have a reading goal of 100 books this year as someone who just got back into reading, and I read 11 books in January. So let's talk about them all, shall we? Now, first and foremost, oh, that's in the way. So I did actually get a Kindle for Christmas. Now, most of the books I read were on my Kindle, but I think we'll go through the physical books I read first, and then we'll go through the books I read on my Kindle. I technically finished this on February 2nd, but I started it in January, and I also just cannot wait another month to talk about this book, so we're talking about this book first. I've never been so confused when reading a book in my life. I know it's a part of a series. I've read book 1, I've read book 2, I even reread them 2 weeks before I read this, and I don't know. I think the author purposely did it so that you would have so many questions in lead up for book number 4. But I'm just feel like I need to reread it and annotate it because I'm just so confused. I've read so many recaps. I've spoken to my sister who's also read it, and like she's talking about characters that I don't even remember reading about. So I must have just been super confused. I get the preface of the story. I get what happened. I still think the book is good. It's just that there's a lot of subplots in this book that I got a little bit confused about, and also it took about 250 pages for me to actually be interested in continuing to read the book. So this is a part of a 3-book series. So book number 1 is Fourth Wing and book number 2 is Iron Flame. Fourth Wing I was absolutely obsessed with. It honestly got me back into reading when I first read it, which was over a year ago. Iron Flame was still good, definitely not as good as book 1, but this is just like, I get that I had to go in this direction. Like, I'm not saying the author did anything wrong because I don't think she did. It's just, now it's not like cute and vibey. I don't know how else to explain it. I'm gonna reread this at some point this year and annotate it, but till then, I'm living in confusion about this book. I don't even know. But I would definitely recommend reading Fourth Wing if you haven't. It does have some spice in it. Now I kind of just skip those bits. Some of the spice in Fourth Wing though you can't really skip because you kind of have to know what happens during those scenes. So tread carefully. Anyway, that was actually the 11th book I read. I'm not doing this in any order. These are just all the books I read in January. I can't be bothered to figure out which book I read when. I rated Onyx Storm 3 out of 5 stars, but I would probably lean towards 3.5 out of 5 stars. But next we have Nightbane, which is book number 2 of, I believe, a 4-book series. Book number 1's Lightlark. I think I read Lightlark early December, although I like kind of destroyed the book because the pages broke off and some of them fall out like that. So I'm not even sure how I did that. Now it's not in the right order. So Lilac wasn't too bad. It definitely isn't really my thing, but I was still keen to read book number 2 because usually with books like that, book number 1 is they have to set up the whole world, right? They have to introduce all these new characters, new setting, new plot. Like, I can understand when it can be a little bit slow and a little bit boring. Book number 2 is kind of the same. Book number 2 was kind of the same. It's also just like, I don't know, I feel like I'm rooting for the wrong characters. Again, don't want to give anything away because this is book number 2 of a series. But if you read book number 1 or you have read book number 1, you know what I'm talking about. I'm definitely rooting for the wrong characters. So Isla Crown is the main character, the female main character. And I just don't feel that attached to her, really. I don't know what it is. I'm just not really rooting for her that much, which kind of makes her an awful book when, you know, the whole point is that we're worried about her and her city essentially. So I think that's maybe why I don't like it as much. That being said, it is a shorter read. Like, the books are quite small in comparison to something like Onyx Storm. So I kind of want to read book number 3 because I've already read the first 2 books. So I hate leaving things unfinished, but I'm not exactly excited to read it. I can see why people like these books. I do. It's just really not my cup of tea. I'll see what I rated it because I don't even remember. So I rated Nightbane 3 stars. Now looking back on it now, I'd probably rate it a 2-star or 2.5 stars. But again, I guess that's how I felt as soon as I finished the book. I just think the more books you read, I feel like the more your reviews change, because now that I've read more books this month, I would put this down to a 2.5 stars, but because I hadn't read many books this month, when I rated this, it was a 3 stars. Does that make sense? I don't know. Moving on, the 3rd book I read for January is Collided, which is the 2nd book of a series, again, by Lauren Asher. Now, I'm actually reading Wrecked at the moment, which is the 3rd book of the series, but I obviously won't talk about that about today. Now with books like this series in particular, you don't necessarily have to read the series for it to make sense. Some of the plot points do talk about the other characters in the first series, but you don't really need to know what happened with them in book one for it to make sense in the book. You might just be a little bit confused as to why they're highlighting these other characters that aren't main characters. Other than that, honestly, I love a good Laura and Asher book. I do have book one somewhere, but I can't find it. I don't know where I put it. Laura and Asher is just so easy to read. I just zoom through these books like crazy. That's why I'm actually reading this book at the moment, because I just needed a break from such heavy books, because fantasy, you really have to concentrate and you really have to be in the mood to get into them, I find. Whereas just a silly little romance, it's just so easy to follow. Now you are following two characters. One is Sophie, one is Liam. I would say the main character is obviously Sophie, because you're just essentially following her because her dad works in the F1 field. So she gets to go for a season with him, and that's when she meets Liam and the other characters. And you know, you can basically figure out what happens from there. But I honestly would always recommend a Laura and Asher book. That being said, there is a lot of spice out. I actually don't really like spice that much. Despite what it seems like, I do not. It's just a lot of the books that are in the adult genre do unfortunately have it. But I think her writing's just really, really good that I can kind of just skip through those parts and still enjoy the book. That being said, this book is essentially Sophie has a list that she's made. You can pretty much put two and two together. So it is probably a little bit more spicy than some of her other books, but I don't think it's necessarily like, you could definitely just skip the spice like I do. I like kind of just skim read it really quick. But if you like spice, you definitely like Laura and Asher's books, but you can also skip through it without really missing any main plot points really. But yes, rated, I don't even know what I rated this one. I want to say I rated it 3.5, but I can't remember. Oh, I rated this 4 stars, and honestly that's fair. I think that's a good rating. Fourth book that I read in January is A Fire in the Sky by Sophie Jordan. Now, this book was a little interesting. I will say it takes a while for it to build up to anything, and by the time it does, the book's done. I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be a duology, but the second book I don't think has a release date yet. It's a quick read. I think it's like 300 and something pages. Yeah, it's 321 pages. I think I read it in one day because I just wanted to get to the exciting point, and then by the time you do, the book's pretty much done. I will say it's pretty well written. Again, it does have spice. I wasn't really the biggest fan of the spice in this book. It is essential kind of for the plot, for the main half of the book, but I just didn't like it very much. But the writing style is good. I did enjoy the actual plot, just without the spice would have been good. I rated this 3 out of 5 stars, which I think is a pretty fair rating. It's not a bad book. I do like the preface, and it's dragons, and I love a good dragon moment. It's just, I wish maybe the book was a bit longer, so maybe something else happened, or I wish the build up wasn't so long because not really that much happens, I guess. It's kind of hard to explain because it is high stakes. It just doesn't really feel like it, but the writing style is still really good. So it's kind of hard for me to explain how I'm feeling about this book. I would say if the spice isn't gonna bother you, read it, but I didn't really like it that much. But the plot line was good. Is this book number 5? Is this Ski Trip by Sarah Clarke. Now, you're essentially following this main character who her dad passed away in a climbing accident. She has this best friend that she had growing up, and they kind of disconnected. They did reconnect a few years later, but they weren't really the same level of closeness. Anyway, she shows up to her house one night essentially saying that her husband died in a ski accident. So could she go with her to the mountains where it happened, because they need to deal with the police and whatnot, and like the friend group that was there with him. So she agrees and they go. I honestly, looking back at the book now, I did not enjoy it that much. Sarah Clarke's writing is really, really good. I do really like the way that she wrote this, I do. It's just, when you find out what happened and the reason it did happen, I think it's not very good. It's not an exciting plot, you know what I mean? When it happened, you're so just like, oh, really? Like, are you serious? There is like a plot twist in there, which I think that plot twist is really, really good. And I do think her writing style is amazing. Maybe I just need to try another one of her books, because this one just was not doing it for me. I was really excited until I think the last like 100 pages, and then I was like, okay, this is getting a bit silly. It was still a fun, easy read. It was just the end plot was a bit disappointing, I suppose. You know, it jumps into it pretty quickly as well, so you can get through this book pretty quickly. I think I read it again in like one day. You know, I was kind of excited for more to happen and it just kind of didn't. I rated this a 3 out of 5 stars. I would honestly probably change that to a 2.5 out of 5 stars. It was okay, the writing was good, but the actual plot is kind of meh. That is it for all the physical books I read. So now let's move on to my Kindle. Now I haven't been reading as many books on my Kindle the past couple weeks because I've been trying to get through my physical books, but buying a Kindle has absolutely changed the game. I love it. The first ebook I read in January is Promised in Blood by Sadie. Kincaid? I don't know how to say that. Now that is, again, book 2 of a series. Way too spicy, way too spicy. I don't know what I was expecting, but it was not this. But because I already read book 1, I wanted to see where book 2 would go. All I'm gonna say is 3 vampires and 1 main character female, and I'm not my thing at all. I wanted to keep reading because the actual storyline was really cool, and basically there's something going on with the MC's blood that the vampires are really interested in, and then you go down this road of finding out why that is and who her parents were, and it is actually a really cool storyline. Just way too spicy for me. Way too. I don't think I'll be reading book number 3 that comes out in March. Basically, it's just way too much. I wasn't a fan, and I thought maybe if I kept reading it might not be as much because they might be going further into the storyline of what we find out, but it kind of, I mean, it does do that, but the spice is still very much alive and well. So don't know if I'll be finishing that series, but again, I hate not finishing series, so we'll see. And I believe I rated it 3 out of 5 stars because the plot line is really, really, really good. It's just the spice kind of ruins it for me. But again, if you're into that, then this is probably the perfect book for you. I also don't think vampires are really my thing. I'm much more into stuff like dragons. But moving on to book number 2 I read on my Kindle is actually Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. Now this is a very popular BookTok book. I actually didn't mind it. Again, it's spicy. Again, it is spicy, which this one didn't ick me out as much. Again, I'm not really into spice, but this spice in particular didn't really give me the ick as much as other ones have, because I think the way it's written is a bit more funny in some points, if that makes sense, but like it's still definitely spicy. But I did actually really like the storyline of this as well. I think it's just fun. It's an easy read. I read it in 2 days and I rated it 3 out of 5 stars, which I don't think I would change, to be honest. It's a decent read. I think people are giving it a hard time because of how popular it got, but I think it's a decent romance book. Like, I don't know what else people are expecting. They want this really detailed, deep plot line and trope, and I'm like, it's a romance, let people live. You know what I mean? So yeah, probably 3 out of 5 stars. I think I would keep it at 3 out of 5 stars. It's just a fun, easy read. This next book is where an addiction starts. Okay, Zodiac Academy, The Awakening by Carolyn Peckham and Susanne Valenti. It'd be on the screen. Guys, so I don't know how this book series works. Actually, I know there's 12 books in the main series that I'm reading at the moment, but I know there's prequels, and I think there's like, I don't know, I think you can read it from other people's point of views and stuff. I know there's a lot of books in it. I'm just gonna stick to the 12 because otherwise it's gonna get confusing for me, and I find it really hard to read prequels after I've already read the book. You know what I mean? I don't like going back in time. I want to know what's happening from that point, not going back again. This book, basically you're following these 2 main character females that are twins. They live in the mortal world. Both their parents passed away in a fire when they were babies, so they've been in the foster care system for a very long time. And then this guy comes out of nowhere, is basically saying that there are these 2 lost princesses in the Zodiac Academy in the immortal world. It sounds silly right now, but let me tell you, it jumps straight into it. And the next thing you know, they're at the Zodiac Academy and they're finding out, kind of a spoiler, but I mean, if you read the first like 50 pages or 100 pages, you will know this. But if you don't want to know this, maybe skip like 30 seconds. But then they find out they have all 4 elements of the elemental world, and it's basically you're just following them in this Zodiac Academy of trying to find their feet. So then there's these 4 heirs that are heirs to the throne that are now trying to essentially get them to leave the immortal world so that they can still be heirs to the throne. It's really, really good. There are some spice scenes, but honestly, I've kind of sometimes just skip through them and it's been perfectly fine. I absolutely love this book. I have not felt so engrossed in a book in so long. I will say there are some points where I get the ick a little bit because they do use words like alpha and stuff like that, but one of them is a werewolf, you know what I'm saying? So it makes sense why they're saying it. It just kind of gives me the ick a little bit, but you do get used to it. Like now I'm on book 5, right? So now I'm a bit more used to the terminology like that, but when I first read it, it did give me a bit of the icky. Now let me see what I rated the first book because I actually don't remember. So I did actually rate The Awakening 3 out of 5 stars. If I could do 0.5 star ratings on Goodreads, it would be a 3.5 stars. The only reason I think I gave it a 3 stars was because, as I said, some of the terminology kind of gave me the ick a little bit, but as you go deeper into the series, it didn't bother me as much. So moving on, we then go to book number 2 of the Zodiac Academy series, which is Ruthless Fae. I rated this one 4 out of 5 stars. So I actually sped through that one like no other. I think I finished it in 2 days. I don't know how many pages it is. It's 475 pages, which isn't too long compared to some of the other books because I am reading book 5 at the moment and I think there's like 800 pages. Now again, so good, so good. I have heard that people say it drags a little bit and I can definitely see that happening, but as of right now I'm absolutely obsessed with it. Now for the next 2 of the Zodiac Academy books, I don't want to say anything about it because obviously I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm just gonna give you guys what I rated them and if I still believe that rating to be true. So the next book of the series is The Reckoning and I rated that 4 out of 5 stars and I will still stick by that it's 4 out of 5 stars. Also, I should probably say this, I have never rated a book 5 stars before and I don't know why. I just feel like when you read a book you'll know and I just haven't had that book yet. So if you guys have any book recommendations that you think will be my first 5 out of 5 star read, then let me know. And then book number 4 is called The Shadow Princess and I rated that 3 out of 5 stars. Now yeah, book number 4 definitely wasn't my favorite book, but I think it's just because we were following such a different alleyway. Like kind of the stuff that was happening wasn't necessarily based on the 2 main character females, the twins. It was, but it wasn't as much as the other books and I just really like the twins, so I kind of was a bit, you know. But now that I'm on book number 5, it definitely is going kind of back to the main storyline. But this, obviously because it's 12 books, this book has so many subplots and it's just so easy to read. You would think with a book that goes into this much detail that it would be kind of hard to follow along, but to be honest, it's not at all, and I think that's why I like it so much because I can read it for like 10 to 15 minutes before bed and then not be confused. Whereas a book like Onyx Storm, I just had to keep rereading pages because I was just getting confused. So I think that's where the Zodiac Academy really just takes the cake for me because it is just such an easy read. Now I have been having a break from reading it lately because I've been reading some more of my physical books, but I'll probably start reading it again at some point this month because I'm actually filming a different video at the moment, which is why I'm reading so many other books. That is all the books I read in January. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next week with another video and I will probably be doing a February recap of my books that I read, depending how many books I read because January was kind of just a crazy month, but we'll see. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please put any book recommendations down below or any books that you want to hear more about because I will happily yap about books all day.